in all the emails that you sent and all the texts that you sent, there was never a threat, right? It was always call and have them support. This is what it does. We're protecting kids. This is what we're doing. It was always the positive. It was always the affirmative. There was never, if they don't do blah, 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 we're going to primary them and we're going to this and we're going to, it was never that. Welcome, everybody, to the newest episode of A Better Conversation, a political podcast put on by A Better Dallas. My name, as always, is Chris Clement, your host. I'm joined today with a great panel of two other folks. One you see here with me every week, the man, the myth, the greatest mustache in North Texas, Mr. Kyle Mason.
It's a lot of weight to carry on my shoulders. Thanks for...
It's a lot to weight carry on your upper lip.
Yes, it is. But that's why I'm always walking around with my nose up in the air. But yes, I'm happy to be back. We have an awesome guest. We're going to talk about the Texas legislator and all the hard work that everyone did to get a few things done. Please like and subscribe and share this episode with a friend that you think would enjoy it.
And speaking of guests, we have our special guest, multi-return guest by popular demand, Miss Tami Brown Rodriquez. Tami, thanks for joining us.
That's right. Thank you. As always, a pleasure to be here. And as the vice president of Grassroots Mobilization, man, I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't showing up here today. So thank you, guys.
Well, it's also, it's been kind of fortunate for us because the podcast has been able to live through the legislative process, right? We've gone through a full legislative session.
Yep.
It ended, Tuesday this week?
Sign die was Monday, actually.
Monday, that's right, on Monday. And so Tami down there the whole time, there's lots of great information, but you also kind of gave us a little bit of a, kind of explained what the process is going to be early on. And now we get to see sort of the fruits of some of the stuff that you talked about. You've trained God knows how many people with regard to working with your legislators and trying to advance the cause. So I guess the big question that I think a lot of people have is, how would you describe the legislative session, right? Was it a success? Was it a failure? Was it disappointing? Was it a false start? I mean, how would you describe it?
Yes.
Yes.
All of the above. I love the process. And I know we talked initially about kind of how it evolves from a resolution you bring to the precinct convention all the way through. And watching something start from an idea and a concept that we saw as a gap in our legal structure here in Texas, and to watch it go all the way through is exciting and it's thrilling. So overall, I think if we're looking at what matters and what I really focus on, which is the Stop Sexualizing Texas Kids, really honing in on that vertical, if you would, we crushed it. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody's walking around, and I understand that there's so many other areas that did not get the job done. But when it comes to that component, there's multiple bills that are really going to make a huge difference for Texan kids, for Texas families, for survivors of sex crimes, for everything in that arena. Now, as far as the experience itself, I have such a passion for it where I get really consumed. And so what was really interesting this session is that normally I drive, right? I drive up. I was leaving Tuesday mornings and I would drive up to Austin, which is about a 3.5 hour drive, or 3 hours if I'm driving. And we would drive up and I would have a full day between 19 and 20 meetings with legislators. So we packed it, and then I would drive back. Because for those of you that know, I work for a ministry as the director of policy. So I get to make every dollar count. Well, usually I have a driver that drives me up there, just so I have somebody in the car with me, right? It's a long day. Well, one week my driver couldn't go. And so my precious husband, Daniel, decided he was taking the day off and he was going to drive me up there. And we go up and we run him ragged. I have a sweet little intern, Anna Abrams. Just shout out to her. She's amazing. And Daniel, was with us for those 20 appointments. And he's afterwards, we were driving back. He's like, "Oh, hell no! We're going to be driving up the night before. You're going to be staying in a hotel, so you're fresh. These 20-hour days, absolutely not." And because I don't think people understand the actual amount of work and pressure that it takes, because when you go up there and you're having these meetings with these legislators, and usually during session it's with their staff, you're also having to pay attention to all the hearings that are happening. And as you know, when you're testifying before a hearing, you never know when your bill is going to be called. And so in one ear, you have the hearing, and you're running around, you're listening to the hearing, and you're running around to these offices, and then all of a sudden your bill is up. And so you've got to run and then sit and wait to be called, even if you're invited testimony. So even the invited testimony don't really get to know when it happens.
Hey, did you know a Better Conversations on social media? You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and X. Following us will not only keep you up to date on our latest podcast drops, but will also keep you informed on current events around DFW, including election news, volunteer opportunities, and social events like late cleanups on Saturday mornings or our happy hours throughout the month where you can meet like-minded people in a fun social setting. You can also meet local politicians and activists that are our guest speakers. Follow the links below to connect.
It's a long day. Well,
Yeah.
I guess there's the old adage that everything takes time, talent, and treasure, right? And so if you've got deep pockets and you're pushing legislation, you can pay people to do that. But if you are working for a ministry, when you're working with community groups and stuff like that, it's just going to be a dedication of time.
That's right.
Well, so I guess from Kyle, actually, I would pose that question to you. I asked Tami, from your perspective, how would you describe the legislative session we had here in Texas?
Yeah, so completely from the outside looking in, because that's where I'm in. It seems like a lot's not getting done when you look at there's so many bills, there's 400 bills or however there were, and only X amount got passed, and that's what a lot of headlines people see. That there's all these bills that didn't get addressed. I did see also a few House reps and senators, doing the selfie video of, hey, here we are on the last day and things aren't getting done. So that's why I think it's really important to hear from you about what actually it takes to get a bill through. And times everyone is trying to do that with their bill. So a lot of competition. It's a very aggressive competition on trying to get your bill up to the podium and get voted on.
Well, for context, and I just had to check my numbers, over 11,000 bills were filed this session.
That was way off.
11,000 were filed. And at this point, we have 2,650 or 2,627, give or take, passed both houses, right? And now what has to happen is oftentimes people think, oh, it's passed. Oh, we did it. Like
right.
My bill, 4623, it passed. Well, the governor hasn't signed it yet.
Right.
So we've sent it to the governor and we're waiting for that signature.
And the governor isn't bound by last day of the legislative session, right? So he could sign things in a month or two or whatever. Like
he's got 20
time.
days.
20 days. That's okay. I'm
He's
sorry.
got 20 days.
Even if he calls a session.
Well, if he calls, he has 20 days to sign it from when we send it, from when it's sent. Now, what I think is really interesting is for this session, there were multiple bills that we submitted to all the legislators during the interim session so that because that's the time you educate, right? And so we sent out like our 5 main things that I wanted to see happen in Texas. And I have 1-pagers on all of them and reports. And then legislators took them and interpreted them the way they wanted to and then would submit them. And so all said and done, I had about 28 bills that stemmed from what we initially sent. And that ranged. And then you've got 11,000 bills filed. So when the legislative session starts, it's literally like you are like you're throwing elbows to make sure that your bill gets priority. And you get to throw elbows. We threw elbows every week. And what I mean by that is appointments with everybody, multiple appointments with the same offices. They'll have new interns. They'll have new staff members. You're re-educating, educating again. And then when you get someone to actually sponsor your bill and they call you, their office, their legislative director or their chief of staff or their general counsel calls you and goes, hey, Tami, could you write the bill summary, the pre-hearing bill summary analysis for us? Because we have no idea why we filed this bill. We have no idea why we put our name to this bill. And so now that is an interesting phone call to take because part of me is going, absolutely, because this is my bill.
Right.
And
it's your baby.
You betcha. And by being able to draft that pre-hearing bill summary, that's what the chairman of that committee uses to determine if your bill is worth hearing at committee. So part of me is like, you betcha I will in a heartbeat. And the other part of me is furious going, I have spent 16 months educating you, the specific office, on this bill.
Right.
And you have forgotten. But again, because each office, they will file between 80, 60, 80. One office, Guillen, is renowned for filing, I think he did like 163 or 183 bills. Guillen's office will file anything, which is helpful to know if you can't find someone to carry your bill, just go to Guillen. He'll do it for you. So there's all these kind of nuances that you learn.
So I'm going to, especially building off of what you just said there, from my perspective, I thought that we had a great legislative session. I thought there was a lot of the big priority stuff that got accomplished, not the Republican legislative priorities, like the things that voters cared about, like school choice and funding for teachers. HJR 7 for water infrastructure was passed. Like there was a lot of like the ad valorem for intangible personal property, the constitutional amendment for capital gains. Like there was a lot of that stuff that's passed or it has been signed by the governor, all that sort of stuff. Because when you tell me there's 2,000 plus bills that have been passed by the legislature, I know a lot of those are like commemorating the day sort of things, right? There's a lot of that stuff that gets passed. But how in the world can a person be informed about all those bills as a legislature to be able to pass them? That's the thing for me that's like, it kind of horrifies me that we would have in a matter of a couple of months, 2,000 bills get passed.
When so I'm on the Dallas County Republican Party Legislative Priority Committee. And so that committee, each of us took like a vein of bills that we wanted to track and that we wanted to kind of keep posted on. And when the chair of that committee reached out to me and said, okay, Tami, like, where's your list? My initial list of bills were 412 bills that touched whether it was increased human trafficking penalties or bail reform or education or family rights. So in some way, it touched our topic. And my committee was like, what? Like, what do you even mean? Like, how do you even review that many bills? Right? Like, how do you read that many bills? And then I dwindled it to like, after I reviewed them, like 213, right? And then from 213, and I was tracking them. Luckily, there's ways that we can track them. I mean, I do a lot of the grunt work, but there's ways you can track it and follow it. And then it dwindled down to like 163, and then it got down to my 28, right?
Right.
So the way that I recommend that we do it is like find the thing that matters to you the most and get involved there.
Right.
Because to your point, not only did we do all of those great things, we also increased penalties for traffickers. We also dealt with bail reform. We also were the school choice issue, which is, I know it's a hot topic, but so people that are pro school choice, that was a win. all kinds of wins in education and protecting kids in the curriculum.
Right.
Like 2 wins specifically, which I'm going to brag about because, well, they're my wins or our wins, our collective wins.
I will say, I intentionally did not list any of your bills.
Yeah.
I don't want to I intentionally didn't list any of them because I want to give you full spotlight
that's
to be able to
sweet.
talk about them.
So I think the one that many of our viewers and the folks out there can understand is the obscenity exemption, right? So the obscenity exemption in schools was the piece that kind of opened the door and allowed all of the dirty books in school, or as I like to call them, the sex abuse material that was in schools, right?
And so just to kind of make sure that people understand where we're going, as I understand it, so I'll take the layperson's explanation, you can fix it. The obscenity exemption at its purest is, well, yeah, if you're going to teach biology, sometimes you might have some pictures of some private parts or things along those lines. And so that can't be deemed to be pornography or sharing pornography because it's being used for this very medical, academic, health and science type of thing.
Yeah.
That is its purest, the best possible argument you can make for it. But that has been perverted into like books describing sex acts, depicting sex acts that are fictional books that are just meant to be, or memoirs. Like, it's not a matter of like, oh, we're educating you on the birds and the bees. It's
right.
We're giving you the smut that, you know, you'd have to go get in a plastic bag. We'll give you that with your library card.
Yes. And so the obscenity exemption was adopted in Texas. I think it was in 1972, right? So there's a model penal code. And this was, to your point, to protect, you know, science teachers when they show ovaries. Well, fast forward, 52 years, I believe. And it now has turned into graphic materials that if it was after school and you were across the street off property, it would be considered child sex abuse material. So that opened the window for all this content, the ALA, the American Library Association, to be buying in bulk this content. And this is what, of course, you've heard all these, you know, the mama bears rise up against for the last 5 years. Those of you that heard me last time know that I was physically removed by 4 armed officers at a school board meeting because I was trying to bring in a blow up picture of an image that was in one of those books, and I was told by the DISD police that it was porn. And I'm like, you're right, it is. But
I agree. Yes.
That's why I'm here.
Hey, by the way, could you go to the library and review, you know, remove some of these other things with me? Yeah.
And this is the same content that, of course, the school board says wasn't in the schools.
Tami, that's what you should have done. I hate to interrupt. You should have just told those police officers, I put a bunch of my books in the library too that we probably need to go get.
Yes, 100%. Instead of calling my husband going, hey, babe, I'm being told I have to leave the property and I'm wondering, should I fight it and go to jail tonight or should I actually just come home? This was the one school board meeting he did not attend. And he's like, babe, no, don't. Just leave the property. So...
Oh, I thought you were about to say he said, don't come home.
No. This was during...
he said, don't come home without a mugshot.
Yeah, no, this was during COVID. And so he was like, no, the county judge, will make 100% will make a statement. And I won't be coming home for some time. So this obscenity exemption, there were 6 states that never adopted it right across the United States. And it's a state by state issue. And that has been the legal reason why they have disallowed, they don't want to pull out this content. And so this session, I was told it's too big of a hurdle, Tami. You need to just focus on the bill that we passed in Oklahoma that took out the dirty books. Don't worry about the penal code. Well, you know me long enough. You tell me it's too big of a job. I'm going in, right? This Alaska girl is going in. So we were able to repeal that. Now, this has been a 6-year project. I've only been doing it for 5 years, so I'm clearly not taking the credit for that bill, but it certainly, we had lots of women up there testifying, and I do say women because it's the mama bears.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these teams that have mobilized, the majority of them, well, plus Daniel, has primarily been women. But getting that repealed, because that's the head of the snake. I believe it's the head of the snake. Now, the application of that, like, what does that mean with how do we get the content out? How do we physically get the books out? It'll be a lot easier when we contest a book now that that's been repealed.
Yeah.
So that's super big, and that and we have to give Mays Middleton the props on that. That's SB 412. Well done, great job. It's signed, sealed, and delivered.
So we talked about it earlier. That's one that passed, governor signed. Was it an effective immediately? Is it a September 1?
September
Okay.
1. Mm-hmm.
So that's something else for the audience at home. Just because a bill gets passed doesn't mean that it goes into effect immediately, even when the governor signs it. Yep. So it will be determined is this going to be immediately in effect? A vast majority of them are September 1. Yep. And then some of them will be January 1, or even some get pushed even further than that before they're implemented. So you talked about one of your big wins, right? Getting rid of the obscenity exemption.
Yeah.
Or exception or exemption?
Exemption.
Tell us about your other big win where people that are listening, people that are watching may have some work they can do.
So this was one that, in fact, I brought to Chris. First, it was a resolution that we drafted. Our concerns were that we found out that there were 6,888 sexual misconduct complaints against teachers that have gone unopened and uninvestigated in the state of Texas over the last 3 years. And when you look at how children are trafficked and exploited, when there is sexual misconduct against a child, that immediately makes them vulnerable, right? And it increases their chances of being a sex abuse victim by 87% and being trafficked and exploited. So we saw this trend, and I came to Chris and I'm like, hey, like, you're the attorney. I just play one on TV. So help me this is what I want to have happen. And of course, I continue to use the word sovereign immunity, right? I wanted to be able to sue these schools for allowing these teachers to continue to be around our children and not have any recourse for when they cover up misconduct complaints or they don't navigate them according to the family code and the law. And, as a good attorney would, he was twitching everywhere. He's like, immunity?
Well, so this is what I'll say this is something that Tami does incredibly well, is she's a person of action, but she also specifically knows what her goal is. So when you first brought it to me, it was just almost like a complete waiver of sovereign immunity for schools, full stop. And so, yes, that sent chills down my spine.
Yes.
And so it was one of those things. So look, there's lots of people that want to get something accomplished that would have had that conversation with me, and they just would have called me names, and they would have run off screaming in the night with a bill that would have never gone anywhere. Mm-hmm. But you were able to say, no, I'm not trying to sue the school for anything and everything. I just want to be able to sue the school and the administrators for this specific sort of cover-up activity, failure to report, failure to investigate, involvement in the abuse, covering up the abuse, right?
Yeah.
And so what we were able to do is work together. And we did this over the course of a year at various times to tweak the language to where it's like, okay, this accomplishes your goal without doing all of the things that, in my opinion, would have killed the bill.
That's right.
And so that was like a great collaboration. But I will have to say, like, your humility and being willing to say, like, whatever we need to do, like, we just need to accomplish this goal is the stuff that makes that happen. I think that's something that's sorely missing by a lot of advocates, that for them it's my way or the highway. And you don't have that. You don't have that approach. So I have to commend you for that. But I honestly think that's why you were able to get this bill where you did.
Well, and thank you for that, because it's, again, if we look at what we, as I would just say, as conservatives are known for, and not in a great way, right? Where we want to pound our chest, we want to make a statement. When we took our resolution, my little precinct resolution, and then we took it to the Senate convention, and we to 16, which, Chris, you're in my same convention, and we were on the resolution committee together. We were able to kind of massage the wording, and then we took it to the state convention, and we continued to massage the wording,
Right.
because we had to educate everybody of what it means. As a parent, if my child was raped in school, are you kidding me? And you're telling me that there's nothing that I can do criminally or against those people that hit it? That enrages parents, right? And of course, against the teacher, because it is a crime, right? It is a crime. So we do know you can go for the teacher. You can go up against the teacher as a parent. Well, but there's a whole layer of reporting processes and grievance complaints. Some districts have 4 layers of grievance complaints, and your kid has to stay in that school while you're doing a grievance. So the child has to remain in the proximity of the abuser. Are you kidding me? Well, we fixed that this session. We now can take that child out and put them in a different school. But we had to enact law this session for that. So as we were educating the base, people were like, what do you mean if a superintendent doesn't report? There's laws about that. Well, as you and I talked about, there's practice and there's policy. So as a superintendent...
And there's enforcement.
It's a jailable offense for a superintendent to not report a teacher misconduct to the TEA, the Texas Education Agency. However, who's enforcing that?
Right.
And it's also important to note, and there was I'm going to use his name, Representative Shaheen. When I brought this to him, he's like, well, I'll just call the local PD if the school doesn't investigate. And I'm like, that's precious, because he didn't even understand that the local PD does not have jurisdiction. If 340 independent school districts have their own ISD police officers, those are the guys that investigate, if there's an investigation. And I'm like, it doesn't, but people don't know that, right?
Right. I mean, look, I think it's reasonable to say, oh, I live in the city, I can go to the city police for anything that I need. But I mean, there's a lot of people that don't understand where, like, the county sheriff's office, where their jurisdiction is. Then you get these, like you said, the school district police departments, and then they have their own jurisdiction. But look, I mean, the thing about what you're describing on your bill is again, you identified a problem and you said, okay, well, how do we go about fixing this? And this is something that I think a lot of people could learn from you, and they make this mistake. When I used to teach law students, and I would teach them to prepare for trial, we're going to go prove something in trial, I would always say, don't prove too much. Right? You don't have to prove that your client is a saint. You just have to prove that your client didn't do this particular thing. Right? I mean, you don't have to go prove too much. And I think a lot of times people try to legislate for too much. Right? I mean, they're just trying to accomplish this goal, but they come at it with this big sweeping sort of thing, as opposed to just, like you did, saying, oh, well, yeah, we need to be able to move them to a different school. That's a very specific thing. You can get a legislator behind that. Hey, this is a real simple, you're not reinventing the wheel, you're not blowing up the system, you're just making this little improvement.
Which in Texas...
Which isn't a little improvement, it's a big huge improvement. But little in the sense that you're not rewriting the education code.
That's right. And in Texas, we have a single subject rule. So I had to figure out how many different steps do we need to fortify. And so we needed to fix that. We needed to be able to actually sue the school district for cover-up. And we narrowed it just to sexual crime. That was accomplished in a 3-page bill. And we needed to look at little things like superintendents had 7 days to report, but the family code, you have to report within 48 hours. So we need to shore that up. So we were able to take these incremental components individually instead of a one big giant bill and really affect change.
You
Right?
didn't do one big beautiful bill.
I was about to, but I didn't. I pulled back. I controlled myself. So incrementally, right? And then the other thing that I would encourage people is in that process, the level of education that has to happen. We literally, when we were trying to explain, when you testify, right? So you have a bill and then you have a hearing, and if you can get a hearing, it's exciting, and then you get to testify, and you get 2 minutes. And in that 2 minutes, you have to make your point of why this bill needs to happen. I couldn't even explain the reporting process of a complaint against a teacher in 2 minutes.
Right.
So I lit for one of our bills, 1097, that died. It died. We did get a hearing, but it died in committee. I literally had to draw a picture. I had to put it into a flow chart, a simplified flow chart, because the committee, and they were made of teachers, some of them were teachers, didn't even understand the complexities. And so we followed up with the flow chart where we literally drew like step 1, step 2, and then on the back of that flow chart, how our bill would perfect it, and a one-pager. So in this session, I think the other thing that we really did a good job of is messaging and to be able to simplify the messaging. But we really have to hone in and unify, because we had so many other groups. So it wasn't just me and the efforts of the research and the reports, but Texas Ed 911. Aileen did an amazing job helping us to get people to testify. She did a great report. We had CDF, Citizens Defending Freedom, also locked arms with us. There were nights that we were testifying up to 3 a.m. We left on the Senate committee at 3:30 a.m. And this was a group of women that initially I had 6 folks to testify, which we only got 10-hour notice that we were having a hearing.
Right.
And so we rallied the troops at 10 o'clock Wednesday night. I rallied the troops. We went back up there Thursday. And as the day wore on, where other groups would dissipate and give up and go home, we gained more testifiers.
That's awesome.
We had one woman who brought her son, and on my ex account, I posted the picture from behind at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was a victim, or we like to call them survivors. So anybody who's gone through that situation, who's been abused, we prefer the survivor terminology, where you can see him sleeping on the floor while his mom was waiting to testify. And that's why we do it. So 3:30 in the morning, we were there, and our group grew from like 6 to like 10, which is unheard of, right? The later it got, the stronger it became. It was beautiful.
And part of that, I very distinctly remember being at convention with you at the Republican convention, and sitting in a restaurant and talking about, okay, what do we focus on? Right? Here are the legislative priorities that have come out, but like what do we really put our focus on? And the thing that we talked about is like, well, what is going to matter to Texans? Right? Like what is it that's going to really resonate and matter with the people of Texas, not just the people at convention, not just the people within our friend circles. And I mean, stop sexualizing kids, protect them in schools. Yeah. That's something that is a bipartisan issue. And you had bipartisan support for the bill.
I did. Big shout out to Representative Dutton. He's one of my favorites. Like, he's my new favorite. The way he is in committee is so fun and exciting. I mean, I know that I'm just geeking out. I can't help myself, but he's so fun and comedic. So he just says things. But when he signed on, so Mitch Little carried the bill, a brilliant legal mind.
Freshman of the year,
carried our bill. And so I got to be there for his first bill layout and his first bill sign. I mean, this is just exciting. But being able to have that bipartisan support, as much as I love the grassroots movement, the majority of the women that have been doing this for a long time would tell me, I'm like, okay, we would, if I see him at the Capitol, we would like see him across the hall and we'd run over like, okay, who are you visiting with? And who are you visiting with? I went to all the Democrats' offices, and these women told me, oh my gosh, I wouldn't even go in there. Like they wouldn't even walk into the office. I got, not only did Dutton co-sign, and not only did we only have 19 votes against in the House, but in the Senate, I got Royce West. We got 100%. It was unanimous in the Senate, and I had 2 Democrats in the Senate on the Education Committee. So we were able to garner bipartisan support, and it was Royce West who even said, "Hey, I'd like to go back and look at the statute of limitations, and I want to expand it. Let's expand it."
Yeah.
So it's, and this is what makes things great and great bills.
Well, and just to put it in context, you said there were 19 House reps that didn't vote for it.
That's
or
right.
voted against it. How many House reps are there? Remind us.
156.
Like, that's incredible. Like, to have that much bipartisan support. But again, that's something that was a priority for
Yes.
people as a whole. So that makes sense that you would have all of these other groups that would join arms with you, that you would pick up support because it's something that everybody cares about. I think that's, to me, the things that I'm the most optimistic. Like, school choice passing, that was generally a popular thing, right? The general voters favor school choice. You have the increasing teacher pay. You have the increase for the vocational schools. You had, like you said, the Stop Sexualizing Kids. You had stuff for water infrastructure, water security. These are a lot of, dealing with property taxes. These are a lot of bipartisan issues that a majority of voters get behind. That's exciting to me.
Yeah.
That's what I like to see. I understand that there are things that should have been accomplished. I would have liked to have seen more done on the protecting Texas land from being purchased from foreign adversaries.
Yes.
Yes, we did get one. I think there was one bill that
There was one bill that addressed
it.
It kind of got watered down.
That's right.
But the thing is that in here, this is going to be sacrilegious. That's okay, because it got the bill
That's
across
right.
the finish line.
That's right.
And it is so much easier to say, we passed this bill. We need to fix this. Oh, in the last 2 years since we passed it, this is something that we've seen. We just need to tweak it.
And what's to that point? So we had the only opposition. Nobody testified against us in committee, right? They did go behind the scenes, but that's just part of the game. And there were 4 things that did affect our bill, right? That did get amendments that were adopted on the Senate side, and it still is a great bill. Mm-hmm. And because I am who I am in this world, on Sine Die, which is the last day of session, I brought in and everybody was giving out gifts, right? Because they all go, it's a kind of a big celebration, and they're acknowledging each other. And we were doing office visits, and I brought my 1-pager that on the front of it said, this is what 4623 does. On the back of it identified the weaknesses and the 2 bills that will absolutely affect it, which is 571 and SB 12. And the 4 things about those bills that will water down my bill to make it harder for parents to sue, which one of them is in 571, that if a complaint is sent to TEA and is not investigated within a year, they can destroy that complaint, that misconduct complaint. And the only person that can PIR are law enforcement, not families. So here I am on the last day, everybody's patting themselves. I'm already I dropped it at every signer of our bill. Everybody who voted yes got an email with the attachment. And I've got staff going, you're telling me that we're going to still get those weekly emails from you. I'm like, absolutely, because now is not the time for us. Because to your point, we may not be in session, but our legislators are working. Mm-hmm. And so by continuing to meet them in their regional offices, if they're not, some people don't have staff at the Capitol during the off season, but I'm still making appointments. I'm still finding out who's going to be where are my key players, how do I continue the momentum so that they can do the study? Because I want to show, I told you about these 4 things.
Right.
I'm going to remind you about these things, and I'm expecting you to raise, to the occasion to fix these 4 things, because if you're just going to wait until the next session, you've waited way too long.
Right.
We've got to be able to give them the data and the information in synthesized amounts, so during the interim session, you can continue to get work done. And I don't think people even know that that's a thing during the interim.
They do not. But this goes back to something that I say a lot about politics, is you have some people that are in it for the right reasons. They're in it because they're trying to make a positive impact. Yeah. And you have people that are in it because it's sport, or because it gives them a status, it gives them a title, it gives them attention, they make money, whatever. Yeah. Right? And so for you, you're already thinking about the next session, right? Because the fact that you passed a bill, if the bill doesn't do what it accomplishes, that's not like the end of the road for you.
That's right.
Right? It's not, the governor signed a piece of paper, I'm going to go write a book and I'm going to go on a speaking circuit so I can like soak in all this attention and get all this money or make some money off of this. Yeah, that's great. I'm still worried that kids are exposed this way. Yes. So let's start getting, it's the fact that you're in it for the right reason, which gives you the focus to be able to avoid the shiny object distractions. Yeah. Like, I understand that there's a lot of stuff that you care about, but I'll just have to say, like, when I think about you, I think of like anti-human trafficking, protecting kids at schools, election security. Yeah. Like, those are the 3 things. Like, yeah, do I think you care about tax policy? Of course. Do I think that you care about national security? No. Of course. Do I think you care about the border, aside from the trafficking part, right? Just in general, like illegal immigration? Of course. But you focus on those 3 things because you're moving the ball there.
Yeah. And I think it's also, I think the other thing to keep in mind in this process is understanding the long game. Because as we are navigating election, like using election integrity or election security as an example, we didn't get a whole lot accomplished this session. No. And I kept getting pulled into that area, and I thought, you know what, I've got to really stay in my wheelhouse, because if you look at like for-profit policy shops, for them to get 1 bill across is monumental. Right. For them to get 7 is unheard of. And when I say that our policy division is me, myself, and I, and Daniel, and I do have an intern that helps out. She was in school full time. It's a lot. Right. And as much as I wanted to help get the gold and silver initiative done, which we did with Kevin Freeman, we got that done. I just was like, you know what? I have to learn to say no, and just have my eye on the ball and continue the drip campaign. It's all marketing. Mm-hmm. Continue the drip campaign. And if you're not reaching out to your legislators, you're elected, if you're not paying attention to what committee members that your bill is going to be sent to, then you're just noise. You've got to be more strategic.
So you talk about being strategic and not being noise.
That's right.
One of the things that we talked about sort of in pre-production that I wanted you to kind of talk to our audience about, building the relationship with staff, building the relationship with people that are not the elected officials. Yes. Number one, it's just being a decent human being and treating other people with respect. But from a standpoint of how having a good relationship and some of the superstars that you deal with down in Austin, like, give our because that's the really, like, that's the behind the scenes stuff that even when you're making House of Cards doesn't really get, full credit, right?
Yeah. And, I'm telling you, that's the absolute money shot, bar none. Having a staff, because it's the staff's job to manage the elected. And as much as people want to get the elected's time, it's the staff that directs them. And I'm fortunate to where a lot of this freshman class, they're like, we're friends of ours. Like, how cool is that? Right. Like, they were friends of ours. So being able to get an audience with the staff. Folks, you've got to be able to understand that if you're just emailing your elected official, you are not going to get a response, most likely. That's not automated, and you won't get a schedule. You won't get an appointment. So if you want an appointment, the way we were able to get so many appointments is to email the elected, their chief of staff, and their scheduler. If you don't know who their chief of staff or their scheduler is, you call the office and ask. You need to include those three on everything. And that's going to open the door for you to get an appointment. I only had, out of 181 elected officials this session, I only had one say, you're not my constituent and I'm not interested in seeing you. There was only one person. And that's fine. That simply means I couldn't garner an appointment ahead of time, but I did walk in there. You just walk in their offices. You can go in. We have the right to redress. So
right.
You just walk in their office and go, hey. But the other thing, that's what we did all the time. I'm like, you guys miss me.
How are you doing?
I'm like, it's me again. And what's so cool is that you begin to know their names. You begin to fortify relationships. You thank them when they sign on. Huge deal. You thank them when they vote the way you want them to vote. And if you're on site and walking into that office, the energy in the office absolutely shifts because they brace themselves. If they know, like, you can feel them energetic, bracing themselves when you walk in, and they're like, okay, what's this one going to be like?
So I kind of want to get a little bit into the weeds about this part
Okay.
of it, right? So you're talking about going into their offices. So obviously, and again, this is, we have all sorts of people, brand new people to politics, experienced people to watching the show. So most of your elected officials will have a local office and a Washington or an Austin office. And when they're in session, they've got their staff in the office in Austin or Washington. So a lot of what you're talking about when you're saying popping into their office are the ones that they have dedicated down there in Austin.
Yes.
And then they've got the staff that's in there, and they might have like one or two people back at home doing constituent services or being a local liaison. But during session, everyone's down there in Austin. So when you talk about the energy when you walk into the office, like, I guess sort of paint a picture about, like, when you walk in the door, like, what is it you're seeing? Like, what's the layout? Who all do you expect to see in the office?
So what's so interesting is that the offices are assigned by seniority, right? So those that have been there the longest have like some really beautiful offices. And the freshmen usually get like little teeny tiny offices that are like way down under the stairs or something, right? They're just not the greatest locations. But when you walk in and you just open the door and you've got 20 something. I mean, it's staffed with between 20 and 25-year-olds, right? For the most part. And you've got,
aspiring poli-sci majors.
Yeah, they are, and they're interns, some are paid, some are not paid. And early in session, you can always tell when they're new because they're told when you walk in to stand up. Right, so they're really new. As soon as you walk in the door, they'll be behind a desk and they'll stand up to greet you. Then as session goes, they get less attentive, and they'll like be eating their lunch, and you walk in. So you've got 2 or 3 folks just kind of sitting there, and generally they'll basically say like, "How can I help you?" or "Hi." And I always start off with like, "Hi, my name is Tami, and I'm from the Akaboons Ministries." And most of the time, after the second or third time I'm there, they're like, "Oh, hey, Tami," right? They know me. And when you have an appointment, it's much easier. But understand that appointment might be a 10-minute appointment. Mm-hmm. Don't expect a lot of time unless it's during the interim. This is where I began my relationship building, is during the interim session. And you have that person, you say hello. If you don't have an appointment and you're just walking in, I always have a leave behind. That's why I said on Sine Die, I had an actual leave behind to give to them that has my email. And you've got a front and a back that explains it. And because they're not answering their email. I mean, right. They may answer an email, but the leave behind is everything. So you have something to leave them. And depending on where you are in the process, if I've already met with them, I've already given them all my information, it's literally just, hey guys, remember, we've not got a hearing yet. Or, hey, you told me, Chief of Staff, that you were going to get your rep or your senator to sign on, and they haven't. And I'm watching. I mean, I literally have these, and I'm watching you.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they do sign on, I get an alert, and then I send them a thank you. But it's keeping it consistent and keeping on it. And oftentimes, they've got candy there, they've got snacks that people have dropped off for them. They Daniel found his favorite office was Little's office because they had a freezer full of ice cream. So every time he went, Daniel went straight to the refrigerator to get his ice cream. It's awesome. He's like, no, I'm just here for the ice cream. Like, they're like, I'm telling you. And then there's different offices. Like, there was one office that did like Red Bulls was kind of their jam or whatever. So the staff is fresh, guys. They're like young and they're trying to do the right thing. And you're sitting down and you're trying to share this very complex idea of why we need our bill to whoever is assigned that topic. So in some of the offices, the scheduler will appoint and assign a time with, like for me, whether it's education or whether it's judiciary, whatever committee that your bill is assigned to, that's who they'll assign you to speak within their office. And I mean, I'm telling you, they're 23-year-olds, right? And so it was cool that my intern's 21, and so they always had some rapport they could build. And sometimes it was just me and my intern. Sometimes I had 5 or 6 people with me. And that makes their staff very uncomfortable. And so I will always say, these are volunteers with our ministry. They're just here to learn. That is really important. If you bring in a whole gaggle of people, they are prepared and hardwired for the worst.
Right, because that's what they get.
Yeah, because they get these mass angry mobs.
You get a busload of people down there to go yell.
Yeah,
It was terrifying. And they, and the other thing is
is that effective? I mean, like what?
Okay.
Bringing a bus full of angry people. I mean, what is the expected outcome on that?
So not 25 session, but the session before, we did get 600 people.
Wow, it's a couple buses
over the session on the ground to Austin. Now, I was a part of training some of those people, and the other busloads I was not. And so I would go in after some of those angry people, and I had the staff tell me, these people came in and verbally abused them, and they're like, you know what, we're going to do just the opposite.
Yeah.
Like, the power behind having relationships is getting a text from the chief of staff when their own rep is about to blow up your bill.
Right.
And them telling me, at the risk of losing their job, hey, just so you know. Or that staff member, when you're at a committee hearing until 3 a.m., that staff member, Rachel Horton, who works in Little's office, she's the legislative director, brought us blankets and chocolates and snacks as we were waiting that 17-hour stretch to testify. So building those relationships is everything. A friend of mine had a bill, the Sound of Hope Act, which was trying to help figure out how the church can rise up in the foster to adopt arena, right? And she did a fantastic job of bringing like 200 people early on in session, and they had the Capitol was just full of these people from the Woodlands area, and they had their flyers, they had all their stuff. It was a one-time deal, though. So it was a big splash.
It wasn't you said wasn't the drip marketing.
Yeah, so they didn't have the drip marketing. So here, me and my intern and I were like, man, they got it together. She was amazing. And it was just a one-time deal, and it needed to be a little bit more consistent. So the magic definitely happens in the relationships with the staff. Yes, it's great to be able to text the elected always, but fortify it with the staff. It's also, we had an experience with the 2217 where there was an amendment that we were concerned about that we wanted brought to the floor. And I'm texting an elected who we believed would bring it to the floor. And he texts me back saying, I have no idea what you're talking about. My staff did not brief me. And so I had to then ask him to ask his staff to send him the amendments that the staff told me they were going to send. So the elected wouldn't move. He
Right.
wasn't going to, because I'm thinking, well, he's brilliant. He's a brilliant legal mind. This is the language that is in there. This is what we need to fix. These are I gave him, the codes that need to be corrected. Even then, he's like, nope.
Yeah.
So that reminds me of how important it is. And I didn't have a relationship with his staff, but luckily I had his cell phone. So I had somebody else who knew. I had a chief of staff that knew his chief of staff, so we could shore up. But being able to do that at 12 o'clock at night while you're watching 13 hours of a hearing,
Right.
You've got to be able to move and be nimble.
Well, and I think this goes back to something we talked about earlier, where there's just so many bills. You can't expect the elected to know them all.
No, there's no way.
There is so much about it that's going to be, this is my staffer on these topics.
Yep.
This is my staffer on these topics. I'm going to trust them to do the research and give it to me for me to be able to make a semi-informed decision. So going back to your point, if you've gone in and yelled and screamed at that staffer,
Yeah.
maybe they don't think that's, hey, you know what? I think that's a great topic. That's something that we need to fix. I just don't think that's the right bill for it.
That's right.
And that's it. That's done. And that's human nature. And it's not meant to be like, oh, they're being petty or they're doing that sort of thing. But it's just like, yeah, if you go down there and yell at, scream at somebody, what do you expect them to do? Like, I mean, honestly, think in your life of any time that yelling and screaming at somebody accomplished what you wanted.
100%. And I'm very passionate about what I do, so I can be passionate without being angry. There's a distinction.
Thank you.
I am passionate when I sit across from them and tell them that my niece was trafficked for 15 years. This is real. Mm-hmm. This is where it happens. This is where it started. I need you to hear me, right? I can be impassioned. Me being angry at an elected who said they were going to do an amendment and then did not do the amendment, me being angry or hateful towards that particular elected breaks rapport for future bills.
Right.
And I have to do a little shout out to, I don't know if those of you watching watched Gutfield, but our bill, 4623, went national because of some of the human moments on the floor.
Right.
And, God bless my husband, because like I have a morbid fascination. Like I love these hearings. So I would watch like 13 hours of the floor, right? Of them on the House floor or the Senate floor. And my husband walked by, he's like, are you still watching that? I'm like, I can't help myself. I know. So there was a moment when Representative Little was laying out our bill on the floor, and I can't remember if it was the first reading or the second reading. It may have been the second, where the opposition, and you guys may have heard the term chubbing, right? They were saying a lot of posts on X would say, oh, the Dems are chubbing. And that basically means they're burning the clock, asking ridiculous questions, slowing the process down, chubbing. And one elected gets up and she thinks she's got Mitch. Like she gets up there and they ask, will the gentleman yield? And the gentleman, which is Mitch Little, of course, says, yes, of course I yield. And she was like, tell me why this bill, I don't know, senators or Representative Little, does this bill include private schools? And he says, no, this does not include private. This does not cover private schools. And she's like, well, will you tell us why this doesn't, like she was trying to like catch him,
Gotcha.
right? This was like a big, massive gotcha moment. Mm-hmm. And he looks at her and he goes, because private schools don't enjoy sovereign immunity.
Right. They can already be sued.
They can be sued because I've sued them.
Oh yeah, I
Well,
saw this one.
Her face broke just a little bit. Like you could see the wheels of her. She was trying to figure out how she was overcome that statement, and you knew that her staffer was the one that texted her that question or didn't do the research, and you know that somebody was going to catch it
Yes.
back at the office
Oh, for
because
sure.
she sat there and there was just, she was so conflicted. You saw her brain break just a little bit to the point where it made national news. And so as much as I relished that moment, I think that goes to a lot of the human moments that we saw on the floor. And if we can't see our electeds as human, oftentimes they'll vote for something, then they'll come back and say, oh man, unintended consequences I didn't realize.
Right.
I think we have these unfair, unhealthy, irrational expectations of our elected officials. And I would say today that watching these guys be there night after night after night until 3:30, 4:30. One of our hearings, it was the school choice pub ed hearing, went until 5:30 in the morning, you guys, where these elected officials, they worked a full day the day before. They have their hearings on the House floor. Then they go into committee, and then they may go back to the House. They may go back to their committee. We had 400 and I think it was 37
Wow.
people on the school choice committee hearing registered to speak. And these guys, like 5:30 in the morning, people were testifying. So, and that means their staff is staying.
Right.
That means they're staying.
And they have to go to work the next day.
And then they have to go back to the floor.
Right.
Now, I know that you and I can look from the outside going, like what you were saying about they didn't do much or it was slow to start. Yeah, like all the shenanigans in the beginning, if they were more effective time managers, maybe they wouldn't have had to go to 5 in the morning.
Right.
Or maybe they wouldn't have to do these 20-hour days. But I just think that we should give them credit because I was thinking maybe I should run. I'm like, absolutely not. Like, those I don't want. I'm too
Yeah.
old to work those hours.
I saw someone that loves attention complaining about there being like a mariachi band playing on the floor. And I was like, so what? Okay. It's a 6-month, 5-month, whatever legislative session. So part of one of the days there's a mariachi band playing. Like, okay.
And it was. I have to say that, like, okay, some of the things though were ridiculous, like the Beyonce Day, like when the resolution to honor Beyonce for, okay, that level of absurdity. But on that particular day, it was Mexican Mother's Day, I believe. They were doing, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like to stop for a minute and have that human moment, just like they stop and they honor individuals in our community,
Right.
or they, so that human connection, I think, is critical.
I 100% agree.
And
I think you get people here, but here's the point. Some of the loudest mouths that complain about it down in Austin are also the ones that don't have a network, that don't have those connections, that outside a small group of people that are down in Austin, they don't really have any persuasive power over anyone. It's like they can go down there, they can be really loud. To me, it's almost like the representatives that I see the most on social media, it's like if I can't look up the fact that you're paying staff to run your social media, what are you doing? How do you have that much time? Like I'm just a lawyer and I don't have time to be on social media half as often as these hardworking elected officials are.
Yeah, and I also think it's interesting working so closely with the staff of these different offices. And I do, because so many of our friends got elected this session, it is cool to be like, I remember Shelley when she was a representative, Luther. Like I always call them by their first name, and their staff kind of tweaks a little bit. They're like, representative. But I think it's cool to also understand that these people are important. Like, you know how much they make? They make $7,200
Not me.
Okay.
I ain't
Plus per
doing that.
diems.
plus per diem. Would they make $216 a day per diem, roundabout? So $600 a month plus their per diem. What is it? It etches out like at the reps at least
Yeah.
like 30,000 maybe.
Yeah, they're not making much.
They're not like guys.
They're making more than, they're not in poverty,
They're not in poverty.
but they're not getting rich.
And a lot of them have jobs.
That's how we designed our
That's right.
Here's a fight that I've been fascinated with. The Jeff Leach, Dan Patrick pension fight.
Yes.
Okay. Kyle, have you followed this at all?
This is awesome.
No.
So if you are in office 8 years, you vest as a public state of Texas employee and you get pension. And the longer you're in office as an elected official, the more your pension goes up. And it is tagged that the pay is not tagged to how much you make because you're only making $72.50. It's tagged to what a district court judge makes in Texas.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
Which is like 140.
Something like
20?
that. I can't
Yeah.
remember.
They just
exactly.
raised it, right?
Right. Well, so here was the fight. So Jeff Leach wanted to increase the pay of district judges, but wrote the bill in such a way that it would not have increased the pension. It would have decoupled the House rep pension from the district court judges, which is basically like our pension doesn't need to go up. We want to pay judges more, but our pensions don't need to go up.
Okay.
And the fight was with Dan Patrick because Dan Patrick was unwilling to do that. Dan Patrick was unwilling to decouple and so wanted the pension to still be tagged to the district court judges, increase the judges' pay, increase the pensions for everybody. And there was like this back and forth that I saw on social media about between the two of them about that, where Jeff was like, hey, I want to pay judges more. I just don't want to pay House reps more. So I thought like little skirmishes like that to me are always super entertaining.
And the last one he said, the last one that I saw, he was like, "I'll talk to you, man. I'll sit down and talk to you." Like the level of detail. And again, I think that's the humanity, right? And Leach, I have to say, I know people have their opinions, but Leach was an absolute champion when I testified in his committee, and if he heard nothing else on this particular, I think it was the reporting bill. I think it was 1097. But when I testified, and it broke his brain a little bit about the jurisdictional issue between ISDs and outside police. And I did my testimony, and I had these other people testify, and we, it's this great, hearing. And then he came back to me. And then he asked again. And then I answered again. And then he came back to me again. And he asked the same question. And he's like, "I think you're wrong." And I'm like, I appreciate that it's hard for you to connect these dots. Sometimes there is a memorandum of understanding.
Right.
I said, but, in your packet, I have a letter from a sheriff that explains fully the jurisdictional issues. And when I heard him make that same comment about the jurisdictional conflict and how we need to, bolster it from the House floor. And I go into an office and I was talking to somebody and they're like, they're like, "We heard you in committee all about that." And then Leach brought it from the floor. Like, you educated him. So don't ever get frustrated that your time, that 2 minutes is not well spent, because that nugget now carried over and touched 28 different potential bills regarding that particular topic.
Right.
So as much as we want to see these mass shifts, that one nugget was huge.
Right.
And because this issue was so personal to him, that he was able to take that nugget. He worked really well. It was in the Judiciary Committee, because he worked really well with Mitch on that issue, and then being able to carry it forward for us.
Yeah.
So you start to win over champions. And if you do your job well and are communicate effectively, all of a sudden I've got raving fans out there
Right.
of the bill, and you're working smarter, not harder. And yes, fortifying those relationships is a lot of work.
It is.
Maintaining them is a lot of work. And that's
You got to eat a lot of rubber chicken and
a
vegetables.
lot of it. And the other thing that will do for those that are listening that might be interested in making a more effective impact is ask them to be, you need to ask those offices if you want to be an expert witness for them, if you want to be invited testimony, when you're going and you're talking about education bills, if that's your wheelhouse, or trafficking, you just simply say, hey, if you've got any bills that you need to get across. I had Dem reps that reached out to us for us to review their anti-trafficking bills and say, speak into this. If we have a hearing, will you testify? So not only are you getting your intentions across, but there's that reciprocity in those relationships to where
Right.
you can actually be speaking into way more bills and making even a broader reach effect.
Well, it's just like, obviously in Dallas County, there's quite a bit of acrimony from the party towards a couple of reps, but we had one of our local Texas House reps was a champion for one of your bills.
Yes, we did. And and Morgan actually Morgan had a reporting bill that that he filed that was similar to one of our bills. So he did actually champion a bill. And then Angie Chin Button was a signer. She signed on to one of our bills. And so, yeah, and being landlords in the middle of almost a year-long eviction process.
Yes.
This is a side note. This is a free one, right?
Oh, I thought this was a great bill.
Where we have been suffering from somebody who's not paid rent since November in our property, and that countersued us, and that our eviction now is in county court, and they just are living in our house.
Right.
If we were dependent upon that money to survive, it would have put us in a tight pinch. And Angie Chin Button, she championed that bill that is going to help take some of those issues and help streamline it so we can evict faster. You know what? I went to her office. I think his name is Brennan. Works in her office, and I had invited them to when we were doing a golf tournament.
Yeah.
I invited everybody that's in the Dallas area to come, and that includes Button's office. That includes Morgan Meyer's office. Now, they don't always do the things that we want them to do, but they have their reasons. And depending on which committee you sit on, that's where you really tend to focus your insight and your expertise. So I do, and they both, of course, voted for all of our bills. I mean, they do vote well. So for me, I think, you know what? Fortify those relationships.
Yeah.
Seek first to understand. And if they have concern about our bills, the other thing people don't do is, what are you concerned about?
Right.
If you can't put your name to this, tell me why.
God,
Tell me why. If you can't sign on, we went to the most powerful Democrat. It was Romo. Is it Rodriguez Ramos? The one, she also ran for Speaker.
Speaker, yeah.
And we presented our bill, and she looked at me. She's like, "Who wouldn't sign on to this?" Right? And I'm like, "Well, if you read it, like, don't just say that. Like, investigate it, read it, talk to your ISDs. If there's a reason that you won't, please let me know." And that, the look on their face, I'm like, I want to hear from my shareholders. Right. I want to understand how you think that we're damaging,
right,
or could be damaging.
I mean, look, I think you came, like, I was one of the first people you talked to when you're doing the resolution, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's fair to say, you knew going into the conversation with me saying, I want to do away with sovereign immunity was going to get me to be like, what? Doing the what now? No, the sky is blue and the sovereign is immune.
That's right.
And so, like, but that's the thing that's just music to my ears, is because of course you want to hear why the answer is no.
Yes.
You don't want to just immediately start vilifying and attacking and name calling. Like, it would be so easy for you. Yeah. And so, and look, I'm going to, for the audience, it would be super easy for Tami to champion these bills but be on social media calling people child molesters and pedophiles and supporters of them and making outrageous allegations, because that would get so much attention. If you start alleging that representatives are trying to cover up for school pedophile rings, you would get so much attention on social media. You might get, interviewed on those national type of shows, if anybody ever still watches them. That's what lessers do, in my opinion. The people that I see that are, their mouth is constantly flapping about that stuff, to me are like, they're not serious about this.
Yeah.
Because the moment you start vilifying anybody that disagrees with you, you're never going anywhere.
Well, that speaks to, I hope that everybody watching saw some of our reports where I took all those 6,888 sexual misconduct complaints, and we had one of our fellow ABD members, Sean O'Leary.
Yes.
He took that data for me as a data scientist, and he was able to work it and do the geolocation to understand which ISDs are in which House and Senate district. And then I took that data, and I had a great intern out of Georgia. She pulled a report and made a unique report for every single House district and every single Senate district, so they knew their number. And it had the names of the perpetrator, it had the case codes, it's all the data.
Wow.
And so that's 181 reports that we did manually because, and then not only did I print them out and bring those reports to me and met with 181 offices, and I also emailed them each week and reminded them of their numbers. And I did a social media campaign where I did on X, I identified their number and I called them forth to be great. Mm-hmm. I said, did you know and I called it the HB 4623 files. And then I identified the district, the elected, their number, like whatever, 888 complaints or 72 complaints, and then a one-liner, and I called them to help stop the cover-up, right? I did it to the election or the education committee. I did it to, when I would be in front of the committees, I would tell them this aggregated amount of individuals, this represents 7,992 complaints, whatever, right?
Right.
But we did it so smart that anytime somebody signed on, you're a champion. It was a positive affirmation. It was speaking life into these elected, giving them the chance to rise up and be great. And then on the education committee, when I said, something about somebody signs on and I'm like, hey, do you support this or you're going to sign on? Keisha Richardson, I think is her name. She immediately responded on X going, no, we're in full support. I just signed on. And she tagged all the people. She goes, these are the members of the education committee. Tag them and have them sign on. So like that, doing it that way encourages them and gives them an opportunity to be great. When we were told who was going to carry it in the Senate, which is Senator Paxton carried it in the Senate for us when it crossed over. And we were told by her office that she was going to sign on. And that was on Monday, and this was Thursday, and I had to have her sign on. Instead of calling out, like, what's going on, Senator Paxton, I publicly thanked her and her office for being willing to sign on to our bill.
Right.
That is a whole different shift. And the very next day, that name popped up. So either TLO lagged, right, in the time frame of when they apply, to sign on, and I was just getting impatient, so I just went ahead and, assumed the sale.
Spoke it into the universe, spoke it into existence.
But that approach, it really creates a working relationship and not an adversarial relationship.
In all the emails that you sent and all the texts that you sent, there was never a threat, right? It was always call and have them support. This is what it does. We're protecting kids. This is what we're doing. It was always the positive. It was always the affirmative. There was never, if they don't do blah, 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 we're going to primary them and we're going to this and we're going to, it was never that. And again, to your point, like that's how you build a coalition of people that will support something like that. Again, especially when it's something that so many Texans care about.
Well, and it affects, when we look at when we look at the individual bills, and we were listening to them negotiate on the floor, and I'm hearing like this very small subset of people that this bill might affect, right? Or not my bill, but other bills. And I'm listening and I'm getting frustrated because I'm like, okay, that bill affects maybe, 100,000 people.
Right.
My bill affected 5.5 million children are at risk. 5.5 million children are in public schools right now in the great state of Texas. And I would get frustrated because there wasn't an urgency. And I was frustrated because it wasn't getting done fast enough. We had a high bill number. 4623 is a high bill number, and that could have jeopardized this. But I also think, Chris, that because I have faith, because of who I answer to, yeah, it would be easy to go ballistic on people. There were times when I wanted to throttle people and throat punch them and all those things.
Wow.
But at the end of the day, oh yeah, you don't know. Like, look,
I wasn't even expecting you to say that.
Look,
escalated quickly.
This girl's from Alaska, right? Like, I can gut a moose and pack the meat out.
Oh
like,
my
I'm
gosh.
a little bit tougher than I may appear. But I also have, as a Christian, I have such a different moral compass. I have such accountability in my actions that keeps me in check.
And that's so, I don't know, as you've been talking about this, like and I don't mean to say this in a way that would be sacrilegious, but you are taking the gospel to people.
100%.
Right? Like the way that you approach sharing this information is you are taking the good news. Yeah. Right? When we read the New Testament, the disciples went out there to share the good news with, the Gentiles and with the people of the world. They didn't go out to threaten them with damnation. They went out to share the good news, to breathe life into the masses, to breathe life into the way. And like you can definitely see that inspiration in how Jacobian's ministries, how you go about approaching things. And I think that's like, yeah, when you talk about a bill like that, there is a bit of divinity where you have somebody that, the light bulb went off.
Yeah. It's also, I think, in the way, if you see, most people can't stand going to the Capitol. Like, let's be frank. Most people, when I'm like, it was an awesome this week, they're like, I'm so sorry. And I find that curious because as you know, I work in this session, I worked in 20 other states. And I love every Capitol I go to. And I don't feel it being dark and heavy as the way a lot of people describe it. I think it's exciting and it's encouraging. And just as I work in a very dark space of human trafficking, I don't get beat down because of the topic. There's a real thing that happens where people get depressed. It's anxiety because the things that we see, the things that we hear every day are horrible. They're horrific. And for me, I see such beauty in what we do, and I see such hope and light, and we cannot get weary of well-doing, whether it's, saving kids from being trafficked, whether it's saving kids before they need to be rescued,
right,
whether it's thinking about a bill, thinking about how we can make things better. And even, God bless Mitch Little, because he's a Christian. He preaches often at church. And when we got it through the Senate, he was a little discouraged Sunday night. He thought it was crossed over, and he was concerned before we had our, after we had our hearing, he was actually concerned. We had our hearing on Thursday. It ran into Friday. It passed unanimously. And Sunday, he's like, they're trying to kill our bill. Like and we got it out of the Senate unanimously, right? And so I'm like, we did it. And I'm like speaking life on him. I'm like, way to go. You're amazing. And his text back to me was, we still have one more signature to get. Like, he was not going to celebrate. Mm-hmm. He is not going to celebrate until, as a true attorney would, right?
Yeah.
So it's that where I get excited. I see life. I speak life. I see the positive in it. And he's like, one more signature. But yet I don't see any reason why that signature is not going to happen.
Right.
But I just think that that's two different ways two different perspectives. And I think that's why this space works so well for me, because I truly do enjoy it. And I do see the good and the light and the pure and all the things that we're doing.
Well, for as many lawyers as you surround yourself with, it's amazing that you keep that positive. You keep talking about all these people as like lawyers. It's like,
lawyers.
God bless you on that.
Yeah. So, yeah. And we also have a lot of support with the AG's office on this, because my hope, because we can't our bill will not allow us to go back and address those 6,888 sexual misconduct complaints. However, I do think there will be an appetite that to look into those, because we can only go forward, and all these complaints are going to be still housed at the TEA, so it still doesn't effectually fix the investigation process. So I think if the AG, we can do some things to address those 6,888. And just as Lieutenant Governor Patrick said, I don't know if you saw the clip, but you definitely need to follow me on real TBR_TX on X. And there's a beautiful clip from the floor when the Lieutenant Governor said, we are going to take this bill, we are going to put it in a special envelope and mail it to every single superintendent, every single principal. No more excuses. You will go to jail. Your life will be ruined from this point on. Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about.
There you go. Said authoritatively.
Yeah, it was so great. So I do believe things will change.
Well, again, congratulations on everything that you were able to accomplish and your team was able to accomplish. It wasn't work, like you said, that started in January. It's work that's been going on for, you said, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
So it's great to see the fruits of that. But I have to give Kyle, I have to give you the platform, as we talked about earlier today.
Okay.
One of Kyle's great passions, if you don't know, is transportation.
Oh, yes.
And occasionally public-private transportation.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically toll roads.
Yes.
So, we usually have Kyle's current events. Yep. So this, Kyle, why don't you let our readers know what's got your dander up?
Well, yes, we've been talking a lot about the toll roads in DFW, and now TxDOT has decided to raise your mileage, or the cost per mile on the toll road, as if it already was not expensive enough. The revenue, I guess, the reasonings, and we they're saying they're not getting enough revenue to maintain the toll road, and all the branch roads coming on and off the different toll roads. Now,
wait.
Is this TxDOT that's doing it, or is it the toll authority?
Well, it's ran and operated by TxDOT.
Okay, so I didn't know that. I thought the toll authorities, like the NTTA, ran the tollway.
Wait. So you mean the $5.87 that I often pay going one way to get from my house in East Dallas to Irving, depending on the flow of traffic, right? Because they do expandable fees to where the more you need it, the more they charge you. The more the other side isn't enough.
So no, yeah. So they're upping the mileage charge. So they're up toll tag, and you're right. It's NTTA, the North Texas Toll Road, it's currently 22 cents or 21 cents to 22 cents per mile, starting July 1st.
On the toll road, what you're saying, that's how they charge us?
Yeah, they charge you per mile, right?
So, but that rate is flexible depending on how busy it is, right?
I don't think that it has surge
pricing.
I think they've discussed doing surge pricing.
Yeah.
They do surge pricing on the tollway from the tollway 635.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, because it's between $1.87 and $5.87 depending.
Maybe
on 635 or on the on the Dallas North Tollway? Because there's the two.
That's the Express.
The Express.
The Express.
Okay, yeah.
That's the Express.
Yeah.
There is surge pricing on that.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So once again, this is just another example of, I mean, the road has been paid for how many times over?
Well, but so here, actually, I'm glad that you brought that up, because here we have two different types of tolling, right? You have the Dallas North Tollway, which is just a dedicated tollway,
Right.
and then you have the express lanes on 635. So you've got the free 635,
Yeah.
and then you pay the premium to go on the expressway.
Right. Down into, I like to think it's Gotham down there.
It
Right.
is.
It's
Every day.
it's the Autobahn.
Yeah.
Is what it is down there, and it's worth it.
It's fun, but
So I know, Kyle, you're generally against like the toll authority, and Tammy, jump in on this. This is something that Kyle and I've discussed in the past. So you're, welcome to the strange things that we get into when we're not supervised.
yeah.
But what do you think, Kyle, about the expressway? Is that a type of tolling that you're more open to?
I'm open to toll roads to pay for it.
Right.
But it's like, if it costs just random number $1 billion and then they raise $1 billion of toll fees, they should cut it down to, whatever it costs to maintain that massive road. So it'd be like a penny a person for a 10 mile,
Right.
and then everyone chips in a penny that drives on that road. In the Texas legislature, they were talking about like down in Austin, they have many different state-run toll roads. And there were people that were like, well, hold on, we don't want to give the toll authority pretty much exclusive access to pick who's working on the toll roads, pick who's going to build the toll roads, pick how much the rate is on the toll road, pick to where they can build. And then there was other representatives that wanted to just let them do that. And there's language in these bills that's like, well, they continue to collect revenue because they pay for it. Just is kind of a general statement of like other tertiary and feeder roads. Well, it's like, what does that mean? Like, what are they doing? And it's not, there's no oversight to it. And to me, it's very like New York City, like you scratch my back, I scratch your back kind of vibe that I get about it. And I just, man, and it's just tough to get around North Dallas without getting on a toll road. Yeah. That road, George Bush anyway, was a highway before. Now, it wasn't a great highway, but it was a highway before. And it's been sold off, and now you can't go east to west, through North Dallas or South Collin County without getting on that thing.
Right.
Well, it's a vendor bill. What they did, or what they try to do, is a vendor. To your point, it's a vendor bill where they're giving preferential treatment to specific vendors, and you and I both know that once we're taxed, they'll never take it away. Like, we're still paying for the frickin' taxes for after the Revolutionary War, when all the things, right?
The income tax for World War I,
yeah, it's still in there. Like the phone tax, like on our phone line, like all of it, right?
Yep.
So the concept of toll tags, of toll roads to help pay for I understand conceptually, but for Texas, who had such a massive amounts of money,
surplus.
of surplus, what was it? How many billions? Like 8 billion or something?
No, it's like 20
something.
20 billion.
23 jumps out, but that could be the wrong bit.
And then we didn't even discuss our property taxes. For goodness sakes, just stop taxing us. We travel to Europe, and I'm telling you, to go from, like, you're spending $30, $40, $50 within a very short between France and Spain. And that's exactly what's happening here.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the idea of a bond type situation where we vote on bonds all the time. We vote to build a stadium. We vote for this bond. We vote for that bond. Like, to vote on a very large bond of, hey, we're going to build this road using this bond. The toll's going to pay for it. once it's paid off, the rate to travel on it would be, a penny a day or something like that. I think that'd be a great way for Dallas to fix up a lot of their roads. And it is a little bit better as far as like who's using the road is who's paying for the road.
Right.
It's a little bit more fair.
Yeah, it's a usage tax.
Yes.
But it
pays it off quick.
I would concur if we had responsible spending. What the problem is that okay, they're getting all those new funds, but they don't. It's not earmarked for our roads. Like it's not. It is like what goes into the general fund.
Well, a
and then
bond
just
would
hangs
be,
out.
but
A
yes,
bond would.
in general, yes, yeah. The general tax rates don't go to
So then you're just paying for a new vanity project for some trees or something.
Yeah. I mean,
Which I mean, I love trees. Don't get me wrong. I love trees. But.
Well, that's what happens with like public improvement districts.
Yeah.
Right? You'll have a public improvement district that'll start. It'll take care of what it needs to build out the subdivision, but it just never goes away, and it just turns into like an HOA type of deal. And yeah, now you have to pay assessments so that you can have the cypress trees or whatever it is. I'm not a botanist, but
So do we believe that we're going to get a special session?
I don't know. I don't know what the governor would call it on.
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, it would be on property taxes.
Well, he's signing a $10 billion, should be provided $10 billion in new funding for property tax relief.
Yeah, they're going to do another buy down.
Yeah, it seems like that's what they came up with was a buy down. That's with part of the surplus. So
Yeah, well, because that's and here's the thing. I am all in favor of that because I had a conversation with some of our local reps in the North Texas area. What they want to eventually do, to your point with the budget surplus, is they just want to eliminate the M&O tax and just have it be part of the state budget.
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, we slowly compress until we just say, hey, look, we know that we're going to be making this much. Let's just roll the thing into the budget. Just take it off of people's property taxes altogether.
I wouldn't mind that at all.
Right, because you have a rental house. Like I live in a rental house. This is something I bring up all the time. Your homestead exemption means nothing to me. It's actually probably bad for me because my taxes are going to go up to make up for the fact that you've done this.
everyone's got a homestead exemption. Yeah.
Everyone has a homestead exemption except for people that rent.
Except for people that rent, yeah. And when you have, when you have multiple homes, yeah. I mean, yes, we have the ability to, create income, and yes, that's part of the joy of being a homeowner at some point.
I just remember my first apartment in Louisville when I got out of college was about $650 a month, and I currently pay about $1,100 a month in property taxes on the rental house that I live in.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
What a champ.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Chris. High
well,
five on that one.
This is why I'm in favor of the compression. This is why I'm in favor of just roll the M&O taxes into it. Let's just get rid of them. But you have to do that with some sort of rate limit on the cities.
How much they can spend on their maintenance.
Well, no, because what will happen is you will have the M&O taxes go away, and then you will see every municipality raise their tax rates.
Oh yeah.
Because
to offset it.
To offset it. So you're still paying the same amount of property taxes. It's just City Hall now has AI assisted robots or something. I don't know. But all right. Well, Tami, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Always a pleasure.
Really appreciate, like I said, all the work that you do, all the work that I know you'll continue to do. From us, thank your team, because to your point, you were down there working for 5.5 million Texas kids without a lot of fanfare, without a lot of credit. I think you definitely deserve good answer for Mitch to get you guys on Gutfeld and on the national news, or Representative Little to get you guys on the national news. But again, thank you for all that you do. Thanks for joining us tonight.
All right. Thank you much,
Kyle.
gentlemen.
You have any Kyle's closing thoughts?
I don't. I really just want you guys to subscribe, and share this video A Better Dallas is doing so much good work. Everyone in the group is doing individually good work. And if you're looking to get involved, message us, show up to one of our hangouts, one of our meetups, and you can find your thing that you're interested in and make a difference there.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thanks for
Guys.
joining. Yeah, thanks.